Who is the HP OMEN 16L TG03 really worth buying? Who should walk away? And does it justify its price tag for the everyday gamer who also needs a solid workstation? Those are the three questions I keep hearing in the comments whenever a new Gaming Plus Productivity rig drops. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I spent a few evenings building a dual monitor setup, running a couple of design tools, and throwing a few modern titles at the machine, so I can tell you whether the hype matches the actual day-to-day experience. First off, let's talk about the kind of person who will get the most out of this box. If you're someone who splits time between creating 4K video edits, 3D modeling, or heavy multitasking with dozens of browser tabs, and you also want to jump into the latest shooters without cranking the graphics settings to the max, this desktop lands in a sweet spot. The Ultra 7265F processor brings 20 cores and 20 threads, which translates to smooth handling of Photoshop filters, rendering previews, and background encoding while a game runs. The 32GB of DDR5 RAM isn't just a headline, it means you can keep your DAW, a Chrome suite, and a game client open simultaneously without watching the frame rate dip. For people who only play once a week and use their PC for spreadsheets and streaming, the same power is overkill and you'll be paying for performance you'll never tap. Now, the practical strengths. The RTX 5060 sits a tier above the entry-level RTX 4050 cards, delivering enough CUDA cores to push ray-traced effects in titles like Cyberpunk 2077 at 1080p with decent frame rates. In my testing, Shadow of the Tomb Raider hovered around 85 frames per second on high settings, and Fortnite topped out at 150 frames per second on Epic. Those numbers aren't just numbers, they mean you can enable motion blur, DLSS, or higher texture quality without feeling the lag that cheaper cards often introduce. The 1TB NVMe SSD is another quiet win. Load times for large game worlds dropped to under 10 seconds, and moving gigabytes of video footage between projects was almost instantaneous. Because the drive is an NVMe model, the system boots Windows 11 Pro in about 15 seconds, and the OS pre-configured window layouts make swapping between a code editor, a media player, and a game window feel almost native. Connectivity is where the OMEN 16L starts to feel thoughtful. For superspeed USB-A ports on the front let you plug in a USB-C external drive, a webcam, and a gaming mouse without hunting for the back panel. 2 superspeed USB-C ports sit on the side, ready for a fast external SSD or a future-proof docking station. In a real-world setup, I hooked a 27-inch 144Hz monitor via HDMI, attached a USB-C monitor for extra screen real estate, and still had 2 USB-A ports left for my MIDI controller. The layout saved me the hassle of buying a hub, something many gamers overlook until they actually need to connect multiple peripherals. The bundled Thunderobot KG3089R keyboard is a compact 89-key mechanical board with RGB lighting. It's not a full-size keyboard, but the smaller footprint fits nicely on a desk already crowded with a mouse, a graphics tablet, and a few reference books. The mechanical switches are tactile enough for typing long scripts without fatigue, yet they still give that satisfying click for gaming. If you're already planning to buy a high-end keyboard, the bundle adds little value, but for someone building a starter rig, it saves a few dollars and a trip to the store. On the flip side, there are some hidden trade-offs that can bite you if you're not paying attention. The case itself is a standard mid-tower with limited airflow compared to a custom water-cooled chassis. Under a sustained heavy load, say, rendering a 10-minute 4K video while a game runs in the background, the CPU and GPU temperatures climbed into the high 70 SC range. The fans kicked in, and while the system never throttled, the noise level rose enough that you might want to consider a quieter room or a simple aftermarket fan upgrade. It's not a deal-breaker for most, but it's worth noting if you plan to keep the machine in a bedroom. Another point of friction is upgradability. The motherboard is a proprietary HP form factor, which means you're limited to the slots that come pre-installed. Adding a second SSD or a larger GPU is doable, but you'll have to navigate a cramped interior and sometimes remove the pre-installed power cables. If you imagine yourself swapping out components every year to keep pace with new releases, you might find the upgrade path more restrictive than a DIY build. For the average buyer who plans to keep the rig for 3 to 5 years, this limitation is minor, but for power users who love tinkering, it's a real consideration. Price-wise, the OMEN 16L sits in the premium bracket for a pre-built gaming desktop. You're essentially paying for the convenience of a fully assembled machine, the Windows 11 Pro license, and the keyboard bundle. If you compare it to buying a comparable CPU, GPU, and RAM piecemeal, the cost difference shrinks, but you also gain the guarantee that every component is compatible and the system ships.